Morning, morning, morning. Good morning. Good morning to you.
Also had a situation where they've suspended the constitutions of some other Caribbean colonies, Guyana, Grenada, and the Turks and Caicos. Why does there seem to be this emphasis now at this time for the Brits to try to put their stamp or their foot back into the workings of the Caribbean? The Caribbean.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you mentioned that history, because I'm glad you mentioned that. I mean, these were infamous instances where Britain suspended the constitutions of Caribbean colonies. And let's be clear, although we were colonies, we all had some measure of internal self-government. So that's what we're talking about. So the BVI is still a colony of Britain, but it has, just like when Barbados was a colony, we had our own House of Assembly, we had our own, ministerial system. So the BVI has this. Guyana had this in 1953, British Guyana, when Britain sent in troops, suspended the constitution, and caused a lot of damage to Guyana, because back in 1953, Guyana was a unified society. You had Mr. Jagan and Mr. Burnham together in one political party. The British went in there, suspended the constitution, arrested the leadership, and then went on to really divide that country with some very tragic results for Guyana. Then in 1962, they did a similar thing with Grenada. They accused the then Gary administration of something called squandermania, spending money recklessly, and suspended the constitution, which led the then Premier of Barbados, Mr. Errol Barrow, to introduce a resolution in the Barbados House of Assembly denouncing the British government for this, because he made the point that even if there's wrongdoing in administration, you don't take away the democratic rights of the people. In fact, you trust that the people will use their democratic rights in elections to deal with those politicians who are guilty of wrongdoing. And again, I mean, so damage was also done to Grenada. And you may well find that you can trace from that 1962 imposition on Grenada to the tragic events that led up to Grenada having to do the Grenada Revolution, and then all that happened in 1983. Yes, and they also did this to the Turks and Caicos Islands back in 2009. Back then, there was no uproar from the rest of the Caribbean. But I think the UK needs to understand that the atmosphere in the Caribbean community in 2022 is not what it was in 2009. And people are much more alert now to these kinds of things. And the Caribbean community, I think, is much more conscious now that it is heading in the direction of sovereignty and independence. Countries like Barbados becoming republic, other constitutional monarchies indicating that they're moving in that direction. So that's the direction we are moving in. And this seems to be in some contradiction with some thinking within Britain, because since Britain left the European Union, there is, in some circles in Britain, this idea that Britain must now re-establish this kind of colonial empire that it used to have, and I mean, we welcome a constructive relationship with Britain, but I think any idea that you are going back to those kinds of colonial relationships, I think the British need to disabuse themselves of any such idea.
And I know CARICOM is making sure that they understand that the rest of the region will not go along with it. I hope that you keep pushing the cause, you and the others in CARICOM, to let them know where we stand as sovereign nations, but united as one Caribbean.
And just before we go, Wendy, we should make the point that if indeed the Premier has involved himself in criminal activity, then, you know, the legal process will deal with that. The
with
Premier
him and not an entire country. Yes.
But not, that's what Mr. Barrow said. You cannot draw up an indictment against a whole nation. You cannot punish a whole people for the infractions of a leader. And you have to respect the democratic rights of a people to choose who govern them. That's what these UN declarations say. This is a fundamental human rights of the people of the British Virgin Islands.
It's what democracy is about. I want to thank you so much for joining us. I look forward to seeing you next Monday to see what riveting topic we'll be dealing with then. But we wish the folks of the British Virgin Islands well as they go forward. Ambassador, always a pleasure to have you. Do have a wonderful morning.
Thank you, Wendy. Much appreciated.
Morning, morning, morning.